over at BangTheBook.com. We are your one-stop shop for sports betting news and information. Lots of great stuff here already early on in the week. Even though Kyle can't join us on today's show, he is going to put together something for the college basketball daily picks piece. Another solid 2-0 day yesterday. Not a whole lot of games on the card here for today, so maybe some more stuff about the nuts and bolts of the industry as opposed to picks, but we'll see what he likes when that article comes out. NHL picks up from Parker Michaels for today as well. If you haven't seen my college football national championship preview, please go check it out. Also, I put up a piece here this morning with some prop bets for both the game and the player props. My NFL opening line report for the divisional round. I've got a golf preview coming today, 4 previews of the NFL playoff games. So lots of stuff going on over at BangTheBook.com. Please make sure that you check it all out. And also check out DSI Sportsbook, where you can use that promo code BTB and the number 200 for a 100% deposit match bonus for the sportsbook, up to $500. Same thing for the live casino at BetDSI. It's only a game until you bet it, and a pretty good place to bet tonight's national championship game. Our first guest on today's program is Joe Everett from DraftScouts and Insider Football. Joe, how's it going today, man?
Going well. Pretty good weekend for me in the NFL, and, man, not such a good weekend for the Bears.
No, definitely not a good weekend at all there for the Bears. I mean, that Cody Parkey, the practice kick, of course, dead center, and then finally freezing a kicker really does work as that potential game winner gets tipped. Double doink, as we all know, off the uprights. Tough morning for Bears fans, obviously. My condolences go out to them because as a Clevelander, well, I know what sports heartbreak feels like. But in any event, Joe, before we look ahead, let's look back. Colts win, Cowboys win. That one really depended on the number that you got, if you got a covering ticket or not. Chargers went outright as a dog. Philadelphia wins outright as a dog. We saw a lot of dogs barking early in the playoffs last year as well. Anything surprise you from the wild card weekend?
I think just the road teams doing so well, I expect, and then also the Ravens' early mistakes and getting away from their identity. I mean, obviously that's the one, the pick I made that went really wrong. The Chargers second time around figured that offense around, that's clear, but they just kind of went away from what they were, I felt. The Chargers run those 3 safeties. They're running small, little defenders out there to take advantage of the speed. Well, if that's the case, then, we'll keep it in the B and A, mano a mano, hat on hat, and then we'll start running the ball even more, I think is what your response should be. And even on some cases, 4th and 1, they go away from the run. They decide to get special teams out there, and you've got Gus Bus, Kenneth Dixon, and all that added weight, and you're running 4th and 1, you don't go for it. I think the Ravens decided not to be themselves this weekend, and that's like my biggest takeaway. But as far as the Texans Colts, the Texans were living a lie, and they got caught. Like, they've got 4 marquee players, and then the rest of that roster, boy, they really need to do some work. And Bernardrick McKinney making the Pro Bowl instead of Darius Leonard. Shame on you, Pro Bowl voters. The Seahawks, though, I think credit to them. And not that this is any future show, but just the fact that they did what they did, turning the page as fast as they did, the exodus of players like Pete Carroll and that special teams and the defense, they're going to be back. They're going to be playing good football as long as that. They need to get rid of Schottenheimer for sure because he about ruined. Only reason that's close is Russell Wilson is soon to be a gold jacket wearing SOB. I mean, I've never really been on his side, but every game you watch, it's just undeniable, the talent and just, the instincts. He's infallible sometimes. Some of those throws Russell Wilson made, it was the coverage was right there. He just made the perfect throw. I guess that's the other shock I've got is that the Seahawks didn't somehow stay alive just because that quarterback's so freaking good.
All right, so let's take a look here at Saturday, and let's start with game 301-302, the first kickoff here. Indianapolis draws the Saturday afternoon time slot, and they take on the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs opened a 4-point favorite out there at Bookmaker, now up to 5.5. There are several places out there in the market sitting on 6. So Kansas City, the preferred side here, coming off of the bye to get Tyreek Hill healthy and get that running game maybe in better order.
Yeah, I think that week off is that's big. Still, though, this Colts offense against Bob Sutton, who's had problems with quarterbacks, Sirianni and Reich, they've game planned. They know a little bit about the Chiefs. It's flat out going to boil down probably who scores last. On the other hand, Andy Reid, he's got the goods on Frank Reich and his play calling. The week off, certainly, I think that's like the pass rushers, D Ford, Justin Houston, going to have some fresh legs. This is going to have to, I think, but Chris Ballard's improved his worth in this game and his experience with the Chiefs. That'll come into play big time, knowing their coverages, knowing how Andy Reid works, and the roster makeup. Heck, he built this little castle here out in Kansas City, so that comes into play. I think the only issue is just who makes the difference opposite Hilton. Inman, I don't know that he's going to cut it. Kendall Fuller, solid player there. He's probably going to have some success against Hilton. So that other receiver is just going to have to make up the hay, and that's going to be the difference. The Colts are going to want to shorten this game and keep Mahomes off the field, though. So I think anybody expecting like some Madden-style hail game breaking out, I'm not so sure about that. But if that does, the Colts are well equipped. Biggest mismatches here is Ebron versus those safeties. Eric Berry ain't Eric Berry anymore. And Ragland and Hitchens, those linebackers, if they want to try and cover Ebron with those guys, that's going to be a joke. So the secondary and back half, they're going to struggle with Eric Ebron. Mo Alley Cox is probably a sneaky weapon for them. The Chiefs, they just don't match up well with tight ends at all, no matter who it is, and they're going to be in trouble against these two basketball player-type bodies. And then on the other side, it's, St. Patrick and the Technicolor Dream offense here. I think the worst part here for Kansas City is that they're missing that running game. Without Kareem Hunt, they're just different. I know he did what he did, and he's got to go. But Damian Williams, Spencer Ware, Kendrick West, those guys aren't Kareem. And when weather gets like this in Kansas City in January, I've been out there too many times. It gets windy as all hell, and there's nothing out there to stop the wind. I think the forecast, though, fortunately for them, is pretty it's looking fair, at least, as far as winds. But that could change. And if it does start whipping, that goes to the Colts' favor with that offensive line they've got. The Chiefs, they're just not as dangerous they were with Hunt involved. They can still – this is still Andy Reid. I mean, they have their safe plays. They can get the flats going, the screens and delays and draws and bubbles and all that crap. It's just the nitty-gritties when it comes down to short yardage is going to be missing. I think you hit the nail on the head, Adam, that for guys like Tyreek Hill, who's played through a litany of injuries, it's a wrist, a heel, I think he even played through a groin at some point in the season, that week off definitely served him well. So I think Kansas City's passing game, if whatever they get out of Watkins is a plus, and then it's another tight end fest. I think these are two primo tight ends in Kelsey and Ebron. I think that Colts team, yes, they're playing fast, and it's a wonderful new-look Colts defense, and I love Darius Leonard probably more than most people not related to him. I probably love him at an unhealthy – he's like a son to me. But I think he's hit a rookie wall. I'm sorry to even say that out loud, guys, but, he's dog-tired on some of these over-pursuing in the last game. I watched him bite on some pump fakes and just eat on a spin move from Lamar Miller. I think there's some it's just point for a guy that from South Carolina State's played 10 games, 11 games, maybe 11, max 12. I don't even know if he ever played 12 there. This is a big leap for a guy from a small school like that. So I'm worried that if they're going to match up and say, well, here's our all-star rookie linebacker against Travis Kelce, see how we do, that's not going to go well. So the Chiefs, they're probably going to get theirs. But, yeah, if this is a game, I'm not messing around with an over, like I said, but I'm probably it's an equalizer factor at quarterback. Andrew Luck, he could match up with Mahomes. If it's who scores last, give me the points, and they probably give me the Colts again. They're playing good ball entering the playoffs, and the week off helps Chiefs. But, yeah, I kind of like Indy here, man. This that almost it's just momentum and how well that O-line's playing. I like where they're at.
This is a real tough game for me for a variety of different reasons. I mean, you've got two teams very capable of putting up points here. And I think for the Colts last week, we kind of saw how much they've grown up this season. I mean, yeah, they still had 6.3 yards per play, but they pounded the rock. They ran for 200 yards. So it wasn't all on Andrew Luck. And of course, they played really well defensively. And they had a good game plan in the first half for this one too. Really they kind of got carved up a little bit when Deshaun Watson had to improvise. 8 carries for 76 yards. That was the biggest problem for the Colts in this game was, just sort of when you have to get lost in space a little bit there, maybe you've got a good coverage downfield, but a mobile quarterback that can move around. Maybe Mahomes does that a little bit here in this game. This is a tough one for me because, as you said, I think this is a really high variance type of game. The total would imply that in the 57 range, and the two offenses would imply that as well. The question here for me is this Kansas City defense. I talked about this last week. Big reason why I like the Colts, big reason why I bet the Colts, is that they were so much better in the red zone than the Texans. The difference here this week is that Kansas City can score in the red zone, second in touchdown percentage, but they were 31st in opponents' touchdown percentage. So if both teams move the football, as we would expect here with a total of 57, it is attractive to take the Colts because they should cash in their red zone chances as well.
Yeah, and really Andrew Luck being back to precision level, I think the whole season's kind of been leading up to this, the way they did the short passing game, not a lot of chances, not a lot of deep shots early on in the year, and now you're seeing the deep shots. Hilton's incorporated, Ebron down the field, and what a revelation he's been. Probably more touchdowns he's caught this year than his entire tenure as a Lion. That guy's opened up the offense completely. So I think they're dangerous for a defense like Kansas City, and that back half can definitely be exposed if they don't get the pass rush there. And with the improvement of the Colts offensive line, I think there's a strong possibility they've got a plan for Dee Ford and Justin Houston and Chris Jones. I think another premium matchup there. Chris Jones, a sack in damn near every game he's played this season. Going up against Quentin Nelson and the new look Colts O-line, that's going to be something to watch on every snap in this game.
Yeah, it's a tough game. I think this is I think all four of these games are tough, in part because we've got the much bigger numbers than we saw last week, but also, wondering how teams come off the bye, wondering, if the timing mechanisms for the teams that aren't coming off the bye, wind up helping them keep these games close. I think this game is a really tough one. Not sure that I'll have too much going on for this one. Although, like I said, I do think, if both teams are going to move the football, both teams should be getting 7s instead of 3s. So, if you are looking at this game from a total standpoint, that is one way to look at it. How about we move to the late game here? Dallas and the Rams. Rams a 7-point favorite. Dallas gets that win and, maybe should have gotten the cover. Certainly, Seahawks teaser players very happy with how that game ended. But, for this one here, I think this is so intriguing because you have a Rams team that didn't look all that great in some of their marquee types of games. They lost to the Saints, lost to the Eagles in that game with Big Dick Nick on the field. And now they get a Dallas team that I don't think is great by any means, but they are at this point for a reason. The offense looks better since they got Amari Cooper. Defense has been solid throughout the year. Rams laying 7 in this one, total of 49, which I wish the total was a little bit different. If this total was higher, I would look at it and say, okay, well, maybe the expectation here is that the Rams do have success against this Dallas defense, or Dallas could have success against this Rams defense. If the total was lower, that would kind of sound some alarm bells for me. But I think the side and the total very sharp for this game.
It's so tough because what Rams team are you going to get? They ended the week 17 on that note against the 49ers. They still let the 49ers score a bunch of points. So you don't feel comfortable putting the touchdown the Rams for some reason. I get that feeling, but the element I definitely like is Wade Phillips against his former offensive coordinator for all those 3 years. He knows Garrett's offense a little too well, having to see it up close in person. Like, bad matchup for Amari Cooper here, whereas we talked about the Cowboys last week. Good matchup, man up, but these two corners, The week off will be big for Peters and Talib. I think they show up and really are motivated to stop Cooper. Talib knowing full well about Cooper, his days from Denver. That Rams, talk about teams that needed that week off. They needed it for their lungs. They would have killed somebody for that week off, I think, not just Talib, Peters, Gurley especially, and Goff. I don't think physically, just Goff needed to clear the cobwebs. That hitting the reset button should be perfect for him. And then Sullivan, Saffold on that offensive line. I think it's huge across the board for them. Still, this Wade Phillips element, Littleton, Jarwin, I think that's neutralized there. They take out Cooper, and you guys know the bottom line. It's the key is Zeke and stopping him. But Zach Martin's healthy. Tyron Smith's going to be out there wrecking balls and race cars for Cowboys. It's the same recipe. It's just I think I've said it, and I'll say it always. The issue is, Dak versus Wade Phillips, and then also Jason Garrett and Scott Linehan. They just dust off Norv Turner's old copy of Don Coryell's playbook, paint by number, and then they pick plays out of a hat. I swear, that's their stupid week of every light. That's how they do things. So if they run a stick to that, they're really going to be in trouble. But I'm assuming someone's going to talk sense into them, like do some short drops, a little more quick passing, more screens, and just flat out use Dak as a runner. Use Ohio State's playbook and just run some zone reads. That's probably your best hope, because if they just stick with those big 7 and 9 step drops, like blatant play action, and wonder why in the hell they're getting sacked by Aaron Donald. Mark my word, every time Dak gets sacked, cameraman's panning to Jason Garrett, red in the face, hands on his hips with that Batman utility belt. I'm wondering why Connor Williams is getting beat by Ndamukong Suh, or why Joe Looney just gave up a sack to Michael Brockers. So I guess I'm looking at the whole thing here is like, why in the hell it's 49 is the total. There's just so much the problems up front for both teams. Premium matchup here too, Zach Martin versus Aaron Donald. That's not just blue chipper versus blue chipper. That may be the best in the business versus the other best in the business. Say what you want about J.J. Watt and Akeem Hicks. I think if Aaron Donald's having to play 5 technique, that's the best doggone 5 technique I've seen. So it's going to be tough sledding on that side. And then on the other side, I just don't have the confidence that the Rams can make it count. Just not that they're going to light up the scoreboard. I think both teams here, they want to get out of this and get on to the next round as soon as frickin' possible. I think the Rams remember last year bigger than shit, and leaving home early, and they didn't just lose to the Cowboys because they couldn't move the ball. They turned the ball over, and the time of possession was completely lopsided, and the Falcons, all they did was keep the ball away from Goff and Gurley, and they're not going to let that happen, I think, this time around. I think Gurley now, 2 full weeks off, maybe 2.5. They've backed up the usage on purpose. I think this has all been a long-term plan. We're going to see a rested and relaxed Todd. They're going to pound the rock, and they really want a shortened game and just please move on to the next round, because I still believe that, man. They remember too well last year and how it ended for them on such a real feel-good season. Well, they're not going home early. I think the Rams make it count, but it's going to be close. And I guess I'm done talking myself into it. Under 49 is what I like the most out of this. Is I just don't – I see 2 real dynamic backs that both teams want to focus on, and both teams have the same damn plan. I don't want them to have the ball. Let's keep it as long as we can. So, 49, I don't know that it makes it.
I think something that people should look for here in this game, and this is something that I'm going to look for, because I think I'm going to wind up with a Rams ticket in this one, because you've got Sean McVay, who's very familiar with Jason Garrett, very familiar with what the Dallas Cowboys like to do from his days as the Washington offensive coordinator. I think Sean McVay has a very good game plan for this game. You've got that extra time. You've got your best weapon back in Todd Gurley. And I think, too, having Gurley back just by default elevates the play of Jared Goff. I know that Jared Goff has had a tough time since Cooper Kupp got hurt, but I think we get a really good effort from Goff here, particularly in the play-action passing game because with Gurley back, that should be opened back up again for the Rams. I would wait on this one because I think what we're going to see here in the betting market is early on in the week, we're going to see some influential people kind of look to set this game up. I think they're going to play a little bit of Dallas early in the week, try and push this down off of the 7, and then come back on the Rams at 6.5 in the middle of the week. I think that's the way this one sets up. I could be wrong, but that's sort of my expectation for the line here. I'm going to look for that. I'm going to look to take the Rams minus the 6.5 if that comes to fruition. I know there's one of them out there right now at my bookie, which is kind of interesting in and of itself. But I think that's the play here in this game, is to wait a little bit on the Rams and then take them in the middle of the week as some of the bigger bets start to come in and push this number back to 7. So if it works out that way, I'll be on the Rams. Maybe I'll still take the Rams at 7, but with a smaller bet size. Don't think Dallas matches up well here. You know, going out on the road now, where they've actually had a home field advantage this season. Look, I get it. The Rams have given up over 5 yards per carry this season. The natural expectation here is that Zeke's going to roll over them. But I just feel like with that week off, with, really no reason to plan for Seattle because they play Seattle twice a year, they spent a lot of time and energy on Dallas. And I would expect the Rams to look like that team that we think they should this week.
No, I don't blame you, and I definitely won't back Dallas. Like I said, refusal to change game plan is kind of what I'd expect, and if that is the case, then that Rams side might just well come through.
All right, let's go to Sunday here. The Chargers in another difficult spot. They make the cross-country trip to Baltimore, play well in the first half, take care of business in that game, winning outright 23-17. Now they're back on the road again in the early game again on Sunday, this time at Foxborough to take on the New England Patriots. Patriots 4.5-point favorite. There are a couple of stray 4s out there now. Total on this game, 47. Not a great spot for the Chargers, but shit, they're 10-1 straight up on the road and 8-3 against the spread away from home. Doesn't seem to bother them a whole lot.
Yeah, it's uncanny how good they've been on the road, and if there's a team that's going to come into Foxborough and get it done, right? What's the real shame is Melvin Gordon. I know he should be back out there with 2 knee braces on. He's still jumping over guys with a brace on each knee. That just shows you what kind of rare specimen he is. I'm just worried about those other receivers. We talked last week. I was very Tyrell Williams' play has been fishy, and I warned you guys last week, running lazy routes, resulting in a bit Isaac Yiadom, the rookie from Boston College, got. Well, he's out there dropping passes on third down in this last game. So that kid is dogging it. You're not fooling me, Tyrell Williams. You're lucky he doesn't play for the Broncos, or I'd report him to Denver police. I think he's out there stealing a little bit of money. And then Mike Williams, a couple false starts, mistakes. Keenan Allen, where he's at. That the Chargers, sometimes they've just got me worried. The one thing that keeps bailing them out is Phillip Rivers. Another guy just cut from the same kind of cloth as Russell Wilson. They're just out there unconscious making plays. It doesn't matter. It's rain, sleet, or snow. It doesn't matter if it's a hurricane. I'm confident Phillip Rivers in that sidearm slingshot is going to make it happen, even with the makeshift offensive line. Michael Schofield out there is such a bum. Not only is he not blocking anybody, he's the lineman that stepped on Melvin Gordon's foot that caused that knee injury. Sam Tevy's a stiff. Okung, there's some serious loft issues with Russell Okung. And shout out to the listeners if you know what LOFT means, have a drink, because Russell Okung just cannot play. The one guy out there that's getting it done is Pouncey. I have to say, was watching last week, firing off the line, lifting dudes, snatching bodies. Pouncey is just playing his tail off. And that's a guy that knows a little bit about Pat's defensive lineman from his Dolphins days. So the little element that the Chargers have going for him is Pouncey and Rivers, but the rest of that team, it's there's a lot of question marks there. I mean, and then how they won last week, forcing the 3 turnovers. Sure, it's Tom Brady, but I don't know that he's going to turn over the ball. They've been playing not as well. He's not going to screw up that many times. The serious worry still is like Josh Gordon, Chris Hogan's not the same player, Julian Edelman, and then Gronkowski's gimping around there. He's like a barefoot John McClane on the top floor of Nakatomi right now. I mean, that movie is about done, and we need to move on to part 2 or something, and then Bosa and Ingram blocking those guys. I thought the Ravens had a good offensive line, but after last week, man, Joe DeLassandris and that O-line really got exposed. Hurst looked bad, and Ingram just looked like the most underrated player in the NFL last week. So Dante Scarnecchia, Pat's O-lineman, they've got their hands full. I think that's going to be a huge challenge, and I would challenge. I think what the Patriots are looking at right now is how the Chargers won, and then the style against that option sort of look. They put the 3 safeties out there, and Derwin James has to be that boy good. I mean, I've just got to go Eddie Murphy coming to America. That boy good. It just gets you excited about football, watching Derwin James just laying dudes out, making plays in space. But if you're the Patriots and you see them 3 safeties and no linebacker, we're putting in an extra lineman. Sony Michel, crank up Rex Burkhead, and James Sweet Feet White. It plays right up the gut all day long. I think that's what they want to do here, especially with their problems on the perimeter and the question marks I think they've got at those receiver positions. Right now it's just this ain't the same old Pats, but the Chargers, while that was an impressive win second time around against that team, I just don't think the Pats are just going to be turning the ball over 3 times. And I guess I am talking myself into another under. I'd lean that way, but I don't know. I just got a bad feel for this game. I guess, forced gun to my head, I'd probably lean Chargers with all these points. No, it's not a bunch of points, but still, the special teams, where the Chargers are at, and I like the fact that they found a kicker. That was the one problem they had last year. This Bagley, the bag of donuts, he's playing well. They've got special teams going for it. I love Desmond King as a returner, man. I don't like any Chargers players by rule being a Broncos fan, but it's uncanny how good King is. He always finds a way to make that first man miss. He's not fast. He's just got vision and understands how to move in congested areas. He plays nickelback. He's a wrap-up tackler, special teams. I mean, that King is a nifty kid, and a veteran player like Phillip Rivers, how well they've done on the road. I mean, I'm nothing but leans for me in this game, but, I probably could talk myself into a Chargers play.
Well, I mean, 4.5 is still a pretty decent number, especially if you expect this to be a game on the lower scoring end of the spectrum. And we haven't seen Brady light it up, and the Chargers move pretty slowly from a pace standpoint. So, wouldn't be a big surprise to see a lower scoring game here, which would turn 4.5 into a little bit bigger of a spread if you are expecting a lower scoring game. We'll talk about all these games as we go throughout the week here, and I want to make sure we've got time to hit Philadelphia and New Orleans with you, Joe. Nick Foles finds a way to advance, big touchdown pass to Golden Tate. Then, of course, the tipped field goal, as we talked about already. Philadelphia gets another stiff test here this week, taking on the New Orleans Saints, a team that early in the year won with offense, late in the year won with defense. And credit to the Eagles for, winning a tough type of slugfest game there in Chicago. The defense played pretty well, although Mitch Trubisky didn't play very well, so that certainly helped. You would expect Drew Brees to be a lot better than Mitch Trubisky was. But big number here. New Orleans, an 8-point favorite. This number is anywhere from 7.5 to 9, total of 51. What do you think about this one down in the Big Easy, Joe?
A dangerous team to go against. Keep telling you about my boy Dallas Goedert, South Dakota State. Go Jacks. That was a great touchdown there. And they need him because I think the Bears kind of gave you a preview about how to not stop Zach Ertz, but limit him. They need Alshon Jeffrey and Aguilar to step up. The Saints just, I think, they don't have the same kind of talent at linebacker as the Bears do. So, sure, Ertz might have a better game, I would assume. And I don't know the weather's factor here because we're indoors. So, you can't blame anything on this passing game. I think it's just funny. The the whole team really likes playing this offense, and it's not just about RPO stuff or some of these Chip Kelly elements or anything. They did the same thing with Wentz. It really is Foles running this show, and I don't know, the demeanor, the calm, what he brings to it. That is a group, too. They just play better with their backs up against the wall. Really had a good plan for that Bears defense, caught them over the middle, underneath. I think Doug Peterson's sort of mojo is back calling plays, is what I'm seeing. And there's an issue for the Saints that Eli Apple is still a liability. So don't be surprised if Philly just doesn't start attacking mode on that side. And then the Saints on offense, they wanted their chance to get a piece of Philly in the playoffs. Well, you had to wait a year. Here it is. Michael Thomas, having an answer for him. Drew Brees, that tandem, they've got the week off. That's going to be a major issue for Philadelphia. I'm still not sold where their offensive line is, though. I know they got the two backs and they want to run the ball, but Teron Armstead and that shoulder, where he's at mentally and to what capacity physically, even if he is back, and trying to block Fletcher Cox, Andrus Pete's on the injury report, Ramczyk, they're not exactly healthy up front. Like I said, I don't know if the Eagles are going to have an answer for the passing game, but man, that's an awful lot of points. I'd be leaning Philly. I think we talk so much about momentum. I hate to go with another road team here, but that momentum is so real with a team like Philly, and if it gets close, we just saw it last week. Playoff teams like this Eagles squad, they're comfortable in close games, and they're proving it because they've been there before. Well, the Saints, they've also been in some tough situations. It's still that Eagles team, they're just tough to get rid of. It's like a bad cold or a flu, man. It's just going to take a while to get rid of it. And 9 points, good Lord, that's a lot of playoffs.
Well, and this is one of those things, too, and I mean, I don't even want to call it momentum. It's just the manner in which these teams won their games. For Indianapolis, like I said, I mean, that game shows you how much they've matured and how much better this defense has gotten over the course of the season. The fact that they won a game where Andrew Luck didn't play that great, the offense, they relied heavily on Marlon Mack, and he found holes and ran the football, and the defense held the Texans to 7 points, and it was a long, arduous drive in the fourth quarter. It wasn't like big plays or anything like that. It was just Houston converting third downs and staying on the field. Those things happen. But the Colts, again, winning in a different kind of way. For Dallas, I don't feel like there's a whole lot to build off of coming out of that win over Seattle. Seattle just wasn't that good of a team. For the Chargers, maybe they lost a little bit there with a bad fourth quarter. Maybe that kind of slows them down. But, they saw Lamar Jackson, who is rather limited as a passer, I think, at this stage of his career. They saw him for the second time. They had a built-in advantage. So I don't know how much I want to build off of that. But for Philadelphia to win a close, low-scoring game, if Philadelphia plays somebody and wins 35-32, there's not much I can take from that because Philly just outscored the other team. But because they played better defensively, because they did drop some picks and things of that sort, but because they won in a different manner than we're used to, I think there's something to be said about that. So maybe that does have carryover here. But again, New Orleans, while they're not the Bears defensively, they're also not the Bears offensively. So I think all four of these games are very, very complex. I think they're very challenging handicaps. I felt pretty confident in last week's card. I feel a lot less confident in this week's card overall.
Yeah, a lot more difficult to cap, I'd say, and it's just the game prep. It's the good teams that made it. We're looking the game we just talked about. You got Doug Peterson, who's developed into a phenomenal play caller, Jim Schwartz, who is arguably one of the better defensive minds out there, up against Sean Payton, the Wunderkind. So you giving these guys game plan and time, it's a hard call either way, and yeah, that's why I'd say it's best on best. It's playoffs.
Yes, sir. Most definitely is. Joe Everett from DraftScouts and Insider Football. Anything in the pipeline that you're working on right now, Joe?
Just the unleashing of the big board. We've got a week away from all the underclassmen making it official. I think the 14th is the deadline, and it has just gotten crazy. We may break yet another record for a bunch of kids not about to get drafted. But that and, preparing for all these all-star breaks in this. don't call it a rumor, don't call it a comeback, but the return of the NFL Draft Bible podcast next week. Keep it locked in on my Twitter for the update.
Nice. Good to hear that. You can follow Joe on Twitter at Joe W. Everett. Joe, appreciate your thoughts as always, sir. Thank you so much for joining us, man. We'll talk to you again next week.
All right. Looking forward to it.